Welcome back from lunch. Hope you had a wonderful lunch. My name is Shawn Lawton Henry, and I am the director of the W3C Accessibility Initiative, which you probably know as WAI. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get going. So I'm going to start with something obvious, something everyone here knows, right? That accessibility is essential, right? It's essential that the web and all digital technology is accessible. Without it, it can be very disabling. With with accessibility, technology can be incredibly empowering. Monday evening, the keynote, Lucy shared some of those examples of how digital technology that's accessible can be incredibly empowering. It's important for me personally. I have low vision and some other neurological issues that's relapsing, remitting, and I need to use several accommodations or adaptive strategies to be able to interact with digital technology as well. So that's a baseline. We all know that. I want to step back and just tell you a little bit about W3C and WAI. I kind of, it's been around so long, I feel like, oh, everyone knows, but I find out not everybody does. So let me just give you that context to get started. So W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium. W3C was started by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the web. And the W3C mission is making the web work for everyone. For everyone. And W3C brings together global stakeholders to develop open standards that enable a web that connects and empowers humanity. So accessibility is one of the key pillars of W3C. Accessibility, internationalization, privacy, and security are the four things. Now, within W3C, we have the Web Accessibility Initiative, or WAI, and a little bit more about the WAI. So this is from our About page, so you can follow up on that if you want more information. But WAI develops guidelines that are widely regarded as international standards for web accessibility and are used for other digital accessibility, including apps, documents, etc. We develop support materials to help you understand and implement web accessibility. We develop a lot of free online resources through international collaboration. A big thing is that W3C welcomes participation from around the world, volunteers to review, implement, and promote guidelines, and dedicated participants in working groups. So the W3C staff is actually quite small. Most of the work gets done by other people coming in and working within the working groups to get that done. I just want to point out a little bit about the range of work that W3C does. You may know us from WCAG, WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, but we do a lot more. So one of the things that we do is we ensure that all of the standards and specifications developed at W3C support accessibility. So we review everything. We have a group called the Accessible Platforms Architecture, APA. Good. I'm looking at Becky. Did I get the acronym right? The APA working group that reviews everything, reviews all the standards, reviews the charters, everything to ensure that anything that comes out of W3C supports accessibility. And then provide guidance broadly in that. We develop the international standards, and we facilitate the multi-stakeholder international development of those standards. We also develop some technical specifications. A lot of you know ARIA, A-R-I-A, and we have moved to just using the acronym. So I'm not even going to spell it out because it is just ARIA now, officially just ARIA. We develop accessibility guidelines for relevant tools and content. I'll tell you some more about that. And then also additional guidance, like I'll talk about the supplemental guidance. Then we have a whole a group of resources that facilitate or that provide guidance on understanding, adopting, and implementing accessibility. Along with that, we support and encourage translations. So we have translations in more than 35 languages, I think. And so that's a big thing we're happy to provide. And just a lot of other educational resources. We also have, we have tutorials and videos and training and tips for getting started, and a lot of free resources online. We also have a free training course. So we have a course that you can take the whole course for free, and it's also optionally you can pay to have quizzes and then earn a certificate. And this year we are updating that course, and we're going to be splitting that out. So watch for that. And then the final thing is accessibility research. We encourage research to support the developing solid accessibility standards. So that's a little bit about W3C and WAI. And okay. Let me get back to... Good. So one of the big things I want to point out is, W3C is standards development organization. That's what we do. So, you might think I would stand up here and say, the most important thing, all you need to do is follow the standards. And that's not true. I don't. So we also actively promote user-centered accessibility. So the standards are just one tool. They're a very important tool, very important for achieving accessibility, but meeting the standard is not the end goal. The end goal is accessible user experiences. So we promote that, and we have resources to help with that as well. So again, really the focus on user-centered accessibility. Okay. Today, we titled the session Update, and I'll give you some update. But what I mostly want to do is raise some challenges and share some of what we're doing on the challenges, and also get your input. I'll give you a couple of opportunities to ask questions or to share things that you struggle with, to share your wish list. What do you wish we were doing? And so we'll have two chances to do that coming up. So instead of doing an update of everything, I'm going to point you to some. So you can do that on your own time, and we'll spend our time together doing, more interaction. Right. So on the W3C WAI YouTube channel, there is a playlist of presentations, and I would encourage you to, look there and find useful information. The first one is called Leading Inclusive Digital Transformation, and it's under 8 minutes, and I did that for an organization in Dubai. So I encourage you to do that. It's really focusing on leadership. And Jan McSorley and I were talking the other day about how important it is to have the leadership on board. So that's something that you might find useful. And then just a few months ago, we did, along with Kevin White, we did an update for ID24, and that presentation is online as well. So that's where you can go to get your updates, and I encourage you to skim through those at least to get some more updates. There's also this update from last year at Access U in this very room. So you can also go to that. There's about a lot of good discussion in that one as well. So I encourage you to follow up to get more information there. Because what I want to take the time now today to talk about, again, some of the specific challenges that we're facing. Right. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the basis for what WCAG and the other standards are. So one of the analogies to think of is that standards are the ruler, the measuring stick for what's accessibility. And if there's laws or regulations, those are the rules that say what you need to do. But what we focus on is the ruler. How can we say something is accessible or not, right? So you may be aware that with WCAG 2, and again, WCAG is WCAG Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And given this audience, I'm just going to say WCAG for the rest of the time. Okay, so with WCAG 2, one of the requirements was that everything needed to be testable. So the requirements in WCAG 2 are called success criteria. And we said these have to be testable, right? So they have to be testable, and they also have to apply in all different types of situations. So they have to apply around the world. They have to apply with technologies now. They have to apply as technologies evolve. They also have to cover every edge case, right? So when all that results in the success criteria, most of them are not plain language. And that's for a reason. That's for a reason. It's because of all these important requirements. Has to be testable, has to apply in all situations, has to cover edge cases. So that was a goal for WCAG 2.0, the success, or for 2. The success, that's hard to say. The success criteria, basically you have to be able to say yes, no. Did I pass it or not? Okay? Now, that's fine for a lot of things. A lot of things we could boil it down into a yes-no statement. However, there are some things that are incredibly difficult. So particularly providing requirements for the needs of people with cognitive and learning disabilities, right? It's just when I say, okay, plain language, plain language is very important. Well, I can't really do a yes, no on plain language, right? I can't do a yes, no on plain language. So what do we do about that? For WCAG 2, again, those are not included. A lot of there are several things that help with cognitive accessibility that are in WCAG 2, okay? But there's a lot that didn't fit. So we have a separate resource that's WCAG supplemental guidance that provides that guidance, but it doesn't have that requirement for pass-fail. Now, a well-known figure, but I didn't get his permission to quote it, so I won't. But he said basically, to be able to incorporate those into the standard he said, it's impossible, but we need to do it, and W3C is the best place to get that done. It's incredibly hard to figure out how to do that. But that was one of the primary motivations and requirements with WCAG 3. So WCAG 3 is really focusing on how can we do that? How can we address that big issue? So how that's developed is into something called assertions. Assertions, okay? And the assertions is a way for, say, a website owner to be able to say, I did this, but it's not a pass-fail. So I'm going to assert that I use plain language, and I have a very specific in terms of this is what I did, this is the resources I used, this is the testing that I did. I'm asserting that my website uses plain language. Okay, so that's how the group is working on assertions. Another aspect that WCAG 3 is really working hard on, another nearly impossible task, but that W3C is working on, is the conformance model. So again, WCAG 2 was pretty much, most organizations and regulations used AA. conformance, okay? So one of the things that meant, and it means a lot of things, but one of the things that means is that, so with WCAG 2, there's 3 levels of success criteria: level A, level AA, and AAA. And because only AA is required. We don't even say nobody should have to meet all of AAA, because there's some things that don't, depending on your situation. But unfortunately, one of the things that happens is that a lot of people just ignore AAA. And that's particularly unfortunate because there's several things in AAA that are really easy to do. So you shouldn't be ignoring them. Do them, you know, I mean, super easy, right? So another thing that one of the goals with WCAG 3 is to be able to have a conformance model that allows organizations to encourages organizations to improve their accessibility. Because right now, quite frankly, I mean, on paper, there's not much motivation to say which part of level 3 of AAA that you follow. So that's another thing that the group is working on really hard right now, is how do I provide that a conformance model that encourages organizations, anyone working on a website, to go even more. Okay. Oh, good. Is that someone? No? Is that Jillian? Is that someone who wants to do a microphone run? You thought you were going to sneak in. Since Jillian's here, I'm going to open it up for any questions. Here's a microphone. I was going to pick on someone, so I don't know if it's on or not. Okay, so yeah, I'll have quite an open opportunity for discussion on other things, but before we get going, oh, actually, before we do that, if you're able and willing, raise your hand. Raise both arms. Good, okay. So most people can do that, right? Okay, so if you don't have a question, put your arms down right now. Okay. Questions, comments, input, suggestions on WCAG 3?
Put me to work. Oh, Pina.
Oh, just say, yeah, microphone coming.
I'm coming.
And speak slowly for me, please.
Thank you, Jill. So for those of some of people who have not been part of the journey, can you talk a little bit about from version 2 to 2.1 to 2.2 before going to 3, right? And what are kind of those differences? Because I thought adding some stuff to 2.2 was bringing it closer to 3. So what are those differences?
Okay, wait, hold the mic, see if I understood the question. So you want to know a little bit about the differences between 2.1 and 2.2, and you want to know the differences with WCAG 3.
Yeah, 2.2, 2.3. So
good.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. I just wanted to make sure I understood. Great question. Thank you. I did not pay her. I will afterwards, though. Good. Okay. So with WCAG 2, one of the huge challenges is what we call backwards compatibility. So for 2.1 and 2.2 needed to be backwards compatible. All right. So they're not substantially different. So with WCAG 2.1 and 2.2, we added new success criteria, but we didn't change the previous requirements. Yep. Yeah, I know. Hold on just a sec. I'm going to say that with one exception, I'll tell you about in a minute. Right? Okay, but in general, that's right. So it's not a major change. It's adding new success criteria, but not changing the old ones, which is, it's so tempting. It's so to want to improve things, but we made that a requirement. As the peanut gallery noted, there is one exception, and that is there's actually one success criteria that we said, you're good, you meet it. So it's 4.1.1 right? And basically in the parsing, I think is the short name. Right. So then in the past, you needed to have good structured markup, et cetera, HTML. And now that's because of the technology evolution, that's not a requirement. And so we very, very carefully figured out how to make that work. And I think that seems to have gone pretty well. Now, having said that, WCAG 3, on the one hand, it's very similar in that people's accessibility needs haven't changed, right? We still need alt text. We still need to be able to increase text size. We still need a description of visual information and in videos. We still need captions, right? All that is the same. So the fundamental requirements, like what it does, what it says, are very similar. However, the approach is totally different. So we really started from the ground up, rethought everything. There's been a lot of groups working on this for many years. It's like, what do people need? How can we make it simpler? How can we make it easier to use? And so WCAG 3 is really strongly focused on user needs. And you'll see that in some of the wording. If I have time, I'll bring it up. Like even the wording for 1.1 alt text. If I recall off the top of my head, it doesn't say something like your images need alt text. Instead, it says users have access to alternatives for visual information, something like that. But again, it's just very user focused. So the way it looks, the terminology is different. Fundamentally, not the requirements, not, but the way it's presented in wording is very different. Good question. There was one more back there, Jillian, Doug.
Coming, Doug. Coming, Doug. Coming. Oh yes. Okay. Sorry.
So certainly, I agree with you that for the most part, those same needs, accessibility needs, still are the same. But I would also say that we, in the past 20, 30 years, have come to. I don't want to talk too directly. I have a cold. So, if can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, but I did not that last part. I didn't.
Okay. In the last 20 years or so, we've come to a much more broader understanding of cognitive accessibility and the needs there. And I think there is a little bit of a change that I think could be made there. And I don't know the current state. I know Koga's been working for a long time. I'm curious how much of WCAG 3 addresses a wider variety of accessibility needs.
That was one of them, perhaps the main goal, target, motivation for the changes. As I mentioned earlier, did I mention that earlier? Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, so we specifically being able to address the needs of people with cognitive and learning and intellectual disabilities is definitely a primary way. So check what I said earlier. I think, I talked about some of the ways that in WCAG 2, that's separate, and some of it's in WCAG 2, some of it's in supplemental guidance. But with WCAG 3, again, that's something that's a primary motivation, is to make sure that we cover that. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the approaches to that is with assertions. Okay, good. I'm going to cover one more topic, and then we'll have time for more discussion after that. Okay. I'm going to say something that I hope doesn't get quoted out of context. Right. So, you know what? Accessibility is hard. We like to say it's not, it's doable, you can do it, but it's actually hard. Obviously, there's some things that are super easy to do, but you still have to know about them, right? if you take something like, alt text, well, it's easy to do, but still a lot of people don't do it, and why? And when you think about accessibility is hard, you think about the wide range. I was just looking at web accessibility. My mom teaches swimming, so she has a website for her swimming lessons. My husband's family has a big fruit farm, and they have a website for their farm, and they update it regularly for, what's available to pick. Is it strawberries or blueberries or blackberries or all the things they have to pick? I have a friend who's the IT director for a small town, a small school system. Okay. And all these people want to make their stuff accessible, right? I mean, they would even if they weren't my friends and family, but now they definitely, definitely do. They want to make their stuff accessible, but it's hard. It's hard for them. And then you have on the other side, you have, large universities, and you have multinational corporations, and they, even the ones who, embrace accessibility and want to do it, they're not doing it. We're not, I mean, you guys, the survey, right? So how do we make it achievable? How do we make accessibility actually achievable? Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. So I firmly believe that how we make it achievable is by improving the tools that people use to create content, right? So whatever the tools are, so it's, your content management system, your learning management system, your social media. I'm not going to list specific vendors or specific tools, but whatever people use to create their content, that can support accessibility. So every time someone puts an image, on the web page they're designing, that it helps them, it requires appropriate alternative text, and it helps them provide good, relevant alternative text. Right? And this is all tools, right? For documents, for videos, for social media, for websites. So this is not a new thought. As a matter of fact, the W3C created authoring tool accessibility guidelines, or ATAG, ATAG, in, anyone want to guess what year ATAG 1.0 came out? ATAG 1. ATAG 1 was what was that?
2004.
No. ATAG 1.0 was in 2000, and ATAG 2 was in 2015, and Utah is the primary editor of that. So let me go and show you a little bit about ATAG. So two things. How's the size on that? There we go. So ATAG explains, there's two parts to ATAG. So one part is making the tool itself accessible so that people with disabilities can use the tool, can be creators. And then the second part is to help authors create more accessible content. So specifically to enable, support, and promote the production of content that conforms to WCAG. So it's there, and we actually have some supporting resources. So there's ATAG at a glance. There's we have some. Just a couple years ago, we created some resources to help encourage organizations to follow ATAG. So we have one for, it's standards to make your LMS, that's Learning Management System. Oh, I said acronyms without saying it earlier. LMS, Learning Management System, CMS, Content Management System. So how to make standards to make your LMS accessible, guidelines for no-code tools. How do you make those accessible? for social media platforms. And those were, when did we do those? In the end of 2022. But still, authoring tool accessibility has not been fully embraced. So I think that's something we need to change. So how do we change that? A few different things. Number one, we need to update the ATAG ruler, right? I talked about the standards being a ruler. And the ruler and the supporting resources. So there's implementing resources along with that. And an exciting thing that I want to share with you, I think Yuta mentioned it in her keynote briefly, but we are working on that now. So W3C is working on the updating accessibility, the ATAG, it's great news, yay! And even better news is that one of the people the main person spearheading it is Yuta. So Yuta and I connected last year at Access U actually, and said, you know, what we really need to do is authoring tools, and that has just been so apparent to me with all the things going on, which I will not mention in the world of accessibility, is that we need to do the authoring tools. So yeah, that work is ongoing now, and obviously I made it 40 minutes without mentioning AI. Has that happened? Right? Okay. But indeed, you know, one of the big things is what's the role of AI in that? And that's going to be important. So what if the tools would do most of it for you? And whatever it couldn't automatically do, it will guide you to do it well, right? I just think that can be a huge differentiation. So we have already started in the W3C community group. That's going right now. So jump in, you're welcome to participate. The community group is open to anyone to participate, and that work is ongoing. We're also working on developing a working group in coordination, again, with UTA and Accessibility Standards Canada and some authoring tool vendors and others globally. So we really are excited about that, and we would encourage you to participate in the developing the next version. And the big thing is you don't have to wait, right? So what the plan is right now is probably to do an update to WCAG or to ATAG 2, because right now it points to WCAG 2.0. So obviously we want to update that. And then again, to do a bigger, more robust rethinking and new version on that. But ATAG is already out there. So here's the thing. What we need to do as community is to start that dialogue, right? So make sure to start encouraging the authoring tools to support accessibility. We already know there's already stuff in ATAG. We already know most of what they need to do. So yeah, we're going to refine, update, create, develop new standards. But like I was talking about the difference between WCAG 2 and WCAG 3, fundamentally the issues are the same. You know, we need to update the standard and the supporting resources. And now with AI, which by the way is also one of the considerations for WCAG 3, but that's going to, I think, it'd be a huge deal with ATAG. But go ahead, start speaking about it now. Speak to your, whatever authoring tool vendor associations you have. If your organization is purchasing a new one, make sure, get accessibility in the procurement requirements, et cetera. So start that talk, start that movement now so that we can, just get people going on improving their authoring tools. Okay, we have time for a couple more. Glenda has one. Where'd the microphone? Oh, it's right behind you.
So I know that the W3C creates the ruler that we measure things by, and that laws create the things to comply by. But one of the things I'm really struggling with is some of the states are assuming 100% compliance with WCAG AA is required. And there's a beautiful working note that was started, but it's still in draft. I think it was Peter Korn and Yanina, Michael Cooper, Charles Hall. I sure wish that would become a finalized note so that when I point to it as evidence that 100% compliance all the time with WCAG AA is impossible, that I have something to point to at the W3C.
Yeah, I think that's one of the motivations, obviously, for WCAG 3, as we know. That's one of the big things with the user-centered accessibility approach. And I hear what you're saying, and yeah, I'll take that back. Because again, what I think fundamentally, if we help people understand, the goal is, there's one in the back, Jillian, the goal is that accessible user experiences. The goal is not 100% conformance. The goal is accessible user experience. And let's check in on ways that we might want to communicate that better. Because that's one of the things, that's one of the motivations for a lot of the resources we have is somebody says, I wish I can point to W3C to say that. So, for example, years ago, it was like, I wish we could point to W3C for a business case. And Sharon Rush helped update our business case years ago. Right?
No, it needs to be updated again.
It's good. It's good. Yeah, so there's other things like that. You're like, I wish I could point to this. The user-centered accessibility came from discussions with you. Right, so I've been really pushing that user-centered accessibility, and I would love to, I know, I had discussions with you. We worked on it together, right? So I would love to have short statement that says that. And I know it's in the presentations that I linked to at the beginning that I talk a lot about user-centered accessibility and not just compliance. So for a short thing, Glenda, there's the presentation I mentioned at the very beginning on leadership. It's only like a 7-minute presentation, and that makes that point. Yep. Okay, in the back. Yes.
Hello, this is Dan Tripp. I was reading a GitHub issue a few months ago about WCAG 3 and the version compatibility question. And I believe it was decided that they were going to open themselves up to more flexibility, going from 3.0 to 3.1. They will allow themselves to have a page that, say, fails in 3.0, but passes in 3.1. If you know what I'm saying. So that's new. Am I understanding that correctly? And is this carved in stone?
So let me say what I know and see if that's in sync. Okay, so for WCAG 2, again, we added requirements in 2.1 and 2.2, but with one exception, we didn't change the old requirements. So backwards compatibility has always been a requirement in WCAG 2 and it's a challenge, but that's been a commitment. WCAG 3 will not. So we are not saying WCAG 3 and WCAG 2 have to be backwards compatible.
So, but more in the future, forget about the transition from WCAG 2.x to 3.0.
Yeah.
This GitHub issue was about the transition from 3.0 to 3.1.
We're so far away from that.
For sure.
Point me to it because I don't know which of the 10,000 GitHub issues it is. So feel free to point me to it and follow up on that. But the other thing I should say, maybe this is a good wrap up, is that WCAG 3 is years away. WCAG 3, repeat after me. WCAG 3 is years away. There you go. So I don't know, there's a schedule. I mean, I think the current charter, the most optimistic is we'd have a draft in 2 years. Okay, so
Will you be at a unconference room later?
I am. Sharon roped
Awesome.
me into an unconference room.
See you
So,
there.
okay.
Beyond conference time.
Okay.
Take a break in between so people can go.
I'll let you say that. Okay. So, in conclusion for now, and I guess we'll keep on that. Yeah, it can be incredibly empowering. Let's figure out how we can make the big changes. I think it's with authoring tools, and you all can help support that. You all can also directly contribute to W3C and our accessibility work. And thank you for your support.